right, the topic of tonight's workshop is youth in recovery. We have two speakers, Melissa and Cody, and Cody is going to start us off.
Okay, I'm Cody. I'm an addict.
Hey, Cody.
They called when they called and said, "Would you be willing to do the workshop on young in recovery?" It's like, okay, I'm willing. So, I mean, I know something about that, but I kind of will preface this with saying, like, I've never had any problem with speaking in front of crowds before, and then I noticed because I spoke at my first home group like a month ago, and I was scared shitless in front of a room of people that I knew, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is just some new phase in recovery. I don't know what this is, but to be on topic with like youth in recovery, the first thing that comes to my mind, which it might not be that on topic, but I was really grateful when I heard that regardless of age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, lack of religion. Because one of the things I can think back now when I was first coming to meetings, the disease tried a million different ways to talk me out of staying. And now that I recognize that we all have the same disease, that's one thing that I would say to anybody else is don't let it talk you out of staying. Because there were, like, maybe I didn't use long enough to be here because I only used 3 or 4 years. But then once I really get honest about that, like, I'd been using a long time before that. Maybe I'm not old enough to, like, be at rock bottom, whatever that is. You know, people say you have to hit rock bottom to be willing to do something different. And then at one point I heard a speaker say, no, you only have to hit a necessary bottom. And I really like that. Because I can be like, okay, yeah, I didn't want to go any further down than I did. So that can be my necessary bottom. Because since I've been here, the main thing is you don't have to live that way anymore. You don't have to do these things you've always done. So that's the I don't have to's today. I stick with those, and like that's on a daily basis. I don't have to do these things. I don't have to cuss my dad out. I don't have to skip school. Whatever it is, I don't have to do that. And that's a lot of freedom because I always thought I had to do what I felt like doing. Okay, so it might be off topic, but it's probably some hope, and it's been running through my head all day. I went to my advisor today in college, and I'm in my 3rd year, and I thought it was going to take me 5 years to graduate, and they're like, no, we've got it set up to where you can graduate this coming spring. So that'll be like graduating with 2 bachelor's degrees for me being an addict that I never thought I would go to school. Like, I was flipping burgers, I was delivering pizza. That's all I thought it was going to be. Like, I can remember the biggest, like, shot in the dark hope being, okay, maybe I can work my way up delivering pizza to make another $1 an hour. I can remember that being, that's as far as I'm going to go. And then for them to tell me today, okay, you'll be done with 2 bachelor's degrees next year, and that puts me starting a master's program a year early. That's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And my first thought with that was, okay, I'm amazed at what this program's done because I still don't know what I'm doing half the time. Or at least I don't feel like I do. But then it's these principles, like even before I had gone through and like I started school and then I relapsed and then I've been clean. This June will be 2 years.
All right.
I'm 3 years. Let me own what I've got. But it was the principle. It was like, I don't know how to be in a college setting. I don't know how to be a responsible adult, which I still don't really know how. But I know these principles that we practice, the honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, acceptance, surrender, hope, faith, every one of those principles I've found plenty of ways to apply them in college, and there's been plenty of ways not to apply them. And I have to remember I'm the student and the professor's the one with the degree. But yeah, that's been like a big part of my experience in recovery is like college on a daily basis and something new, something different. As far as youth in recovery, like another quick story that amazes me that I'll never forget that I feel like I need to share. So at my first sponsorship camp out, this guy walked up to me and he's like, "You look pretty young. Has anybody ever told you they got clean when they were a teenager and they're 15 years clean now?" No? He said, "Well, now they have." I said, okay. Well, I can't quite say that to anybody else about like, I was 20 on my clean date. I'm working on 3 years, but I'm working on being able to say that. That one day I can have that much to offer to say, hey, this can work for you, regardless of age. That's one of the big, like, I can't explain how powerful that was just to, I know I had 30 days at the time and I was looking at, like, okay, this person's been through this much life stuff. Like, most people have, I don't know, it's in my mind, most people had and lost a house and lost all this. And it's like, well, my consequences hadn't been too high because I didn't have too much in the first place. Mm-hmm. But then through the first step and writing on it, there's a lot more forms of unmanageability than just like losing everything I have. And that's one of the things that got me to a place where I'm completely powerless over this disease. I am an addict. I need to check my reservations because I might not have been unmanageable as far as I still had a job. I still had my car. I was bouncing between friends, showering at their place and that kind of thing. But I didn't lose everything I had. But the emotional unmanageability and mental unmanageability, it's more than just what we have and what we lose. Another thing I like to share, when I went to detox, I wasn't looking to get clean. I was hoping they could give me something that would make me want to live with myself. That's what I thought the real solution or the real answer to the problem was. Well, okay, maybe there's something that I haven't taken yet that's going to fix how I feel, and maybe they know what it is. So halfway through my stay there, they're like, drugs are the problem. Maybe you should quit doing that. Screw you. But then by the time I went home, drugs might be a problem. Maybe I should quit doing that. So I had that idea in my mind, but I didn't know what Narcotics Anonymous was. So I went home. I moved back in with my parents. My mom's in recovery. She got clean 6 months before I did. So I moved back in with them, knowing it was a safe place. And then I just tried to white knuckle it, and I kept relapsing. So about 6 months after I got out of detox, a girl that I dated in high school contacted me. It's like, hey, I'm in town, let's go to a movie. So we got back together, and her dad had been part of the other fellowship. And she said, why don't you go to those meetings? I said, well, I've tried that for a little while, it didn't really. She said, well, why don't you go downstairs? Well, what's down? I don't know, some shit for addicts. Just go see what it is.
Basement dwellers.
Yeah, that was my first meeting, and I met my first sponsor that day and asked him after the meeting to sponsor me, and I just kind of dive right in because nowhere else have I ever been that they only care about what they want to do or what I want to do about my problem and how they can help. And there's nowhere else that you'll find that Don't care how much, how little, who your connections were. None of that. Just what you want to do about your problem and how we can help. I knew I'd never seen that anywhere else, and I'm pretty sure if I left, I'd never find it anywhere else. Am I talking too fast, or what's the...
You know you got plenty of time.
Do whatever you want, man.
Okay. Because thought process is bouncing everywhere. Another one of those things that the disease tried to convince me not to stay was I was self-proclaimed atheist when I came to my first meeting, and I had let that run me out of the other fellowship, like I mentioned. And so I asked the woman that chaired the first meeting I was at, I followed her into the kitchen when she was cleaning up. I was like, do I have to believe in God for this to work? And instead of yeah, or you're doomed, or I've heard some of those things. She said, no, just keep coming back.
That's right.
And I've noticed that, and that's one of those things that just popped out some other time I was speaking. That was the first love I experienced in the program. Was no, just keep coming back. Don't disqualify yourself. Don't let the disease disqualify you. And I do have a God in my understanding today. It's not a specific name, but they said it just has to be something loving, caring, and greater than I am. I was like, okay, yeah, there's probably something out there. And when I pray and meditate, I feel better. So why would I stop praying and meditating? It is my mind's bouncing everywhere.
You're doing fine, man.
You can pause if you want to, or if you'd rather wrap up. It's totally up to you. You got time.
Could go ahead and wrap up and have time for others to share, or
Yeah, whatever you want.
What you want to do?
sure, let's do that.
Thanks
All
for
right.
sharing, Cody.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Cody.
thank you for letting me share.
All right. Thank you, Cody. And our next speaker is going to be Melissa P.
Hey, I'm Melissa P. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Melissa.
Melissa.
I'm not ignoring you, I swear. I'm setting a timer so that I don't take up all Cody's time. Okay, so I'm Melissa P. My clean date is September 18th, 2003. Whoop, whoop. I got clean for the final time, hopefully, fingers crossed, when I was 17. And by the grace of God, I celebrated 13 years this year.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel old as shit. Thank you. And, it used to tear me up. It was so cool. I was sitting downstairs in Cecil's speaking, and I was looking around at the people in the rows around me, a lot of whom are from my area, and they're good friends of mine, and I know them. And I was looking at them, and I was like, okay, I'm a woman who's 30. There's a woman in her 30s. There's a woman in her 20s. There's a woman who's 35. There's 3 men in their 30s. I felt like I fit in. It was completely, I'm just surrounded by people within, 10 years of my age. And I was just thinking about how different that is from when I got here. Because in the area where I got clean, and it was a pretty strong area, too, to have 2 teenagers in that area was oh my God, what, are you faking it? How did you get here? You know what I mean? And I'd say the average age was 50. And okay, so I got clean in Palm Coast area, Florida, which is West Palm Beach. If you know anything about West Palm Beach, you know it's this weird juxtaposition of across the intercoastal there's Donald Trump's mansion and Estee Lauder, and Celine Dion's house is up the road, and then across the water it's crack house, liquor store, gun store, crack house, liquor store, dead body in a dumpster. And I lived on that side of the intercoastal, y'all. You couldn't go to the other side. The cops would follow you and escort you off the island. That's like what it was like. And West Palm Beach is and was known as the 6th borough. There's 5 boroughs in New York City area. And West Palm was known as the 6th borough because I'd say maybe 50% of everyone in Narcotics Anonymous was from New York. And the other 50% was either from Philadelphia, New Jersey, or Boston. That was it. Like, there was no one from Florida. I was from Jersey, too. I wasn't even an anomaly. But so everybody was from the Northeast. Everybody shot dope for 87 years. Everybody was a crack whore for 92 years. Everybody had Hep C and cirrhosis of the liver and HIV all in the same body. Everybody had been to jail and prison. Everybody had shot someone in the face. Like, it was a really hard place to come from. And so when I walked in the room, 16 years old, okay, I just want to paint a picture for you of me at 16 years old. I've been the same height that whole time. I'm 5'8", 5'8 and a half. This is me, 5'8", 152 pounds as of this morning. So picture me at 5'8", 105 pounds, walking in about the same skin color as this tablecloth, which is white for the people in the recording, gothed out like you wouldn't believe. Like it was 1987, in like black velvet pants, in South Florida, black velvet pants, combat boots. I don't know if you remember those sex bracelets, the intertwined bracelets that went all the way up your forearm. Eyeliner like I'm a freaking mime or something. Just, it was interesting. And I'm sure they took one look at me in that room and just covered their mouth to keep from laughing. It had to be pretty damn funny. And I had no sense of humor either. Like, I was that little goth chick, you know what I mean? That stereotype. And, it was hard coming in, being surrounded by the dope fiend who used in Brooklyn and the Bronx for 40 years and got shot in the face, and then going, where have you been? Where do you come from? And thank God that there were some people in the rooms who loved me and wanted me to stay clean. And even if they didn't completely understand how I possibly could have known where they were coming from at 16 years old, it became clear to them after a while that I did know emotionally that we were at the same place and that they had to do what they could to welcome me in. And I remember someone told me at some point, they said, addictions are like fireworks, the way that they progress. And some people, it smolders for decades like a sparkler. And eventually it just fizzles out, and then the person dies. And that was me, the 40-year dope fiend in the gutter in Bronx, just sparkling down to the wick. You're a little more like the firecracker. Someone lit you and you exploded, and there was nothing left. And I definitely related to that. Every once in a while my disease still talks to me to this day and goes, did you really have a problem? I mean, what could you really have done? You used for like 4 years. How much trouble could you have possibly gotten into? How did you get here? And I was thinking about it today. I was like, well, what were my consequences? So by the age of 16, I had been arrested. I had been stopped by the cops while copping drugs in the ghetto and searched. I had overdosed and nearly died. I had come real close to dying from malnutrition, because 108 pounds, 5'8", that's malnutrition, y'all. That's not okay. I had cheated on my boyfriend, who was the love of my life at the time. We were together for 4 years. I nearly failed to graduate from high school, and it just kind of goes on like that. You know what I mean? That's enough for me. I don't need to have Hep C. I don't need to lose my teeth. I don't need to have HIV. Thank God. That is not who I need to do today. Bye-bye, guys. It was bad enough the emotional pain that I went through and the consequences that I had were bad enough. So how did I get here? I'll talk about that a little bit. You know, I've been in the program for, if you count the time before I relapsed, 5 freaking times, 14 years. And I have yet to find a better analogy for the person I was before I came to NA than that character Chucky from that show, The Rugrats. I don't know if y'all remember that. That's pretty old school. But Chucky was this little nerdy toddler who, like, mouth breathed, and his friggin' glasses were falling down his face, and his shoelaces were untied, and his tagline was, "I don't think this is such a good idea." And he was just the loser of the babies. Everyone was like, "God, you suck." And he was always scared. He was so scared. And I was like, that's me as a fucking baby. If I was a 2-year-old boy, that would be me. And, you know, I think ultimately that was why I started using, because I was tired of being this scared little dork that everyone ignored and paid no attention to, and feeling afraid of everything. I was tired of being afraid every second of my life. And when I was 13, 14, I found something that made the fear go away for a few minutes. And I found if I did enough of it, it could make me into a person who seemed confident and cool. People liked me. Sometimes they were even afraid of me, which I thought was amazing. They were afraid of me. That was power. It was absolutely powerful. And because I was a firecracker and not a sparkler, real quick it went from, this is fun, to, I need this. I need this to get ready for school in the morning. I need it on the drive to school. I need it in the parking lot before school. I need it after first period. I need it during lunch hour. I need it when I skip the second half of school. I need it on the drive home. I need it to go to sleep at night. I need it when I wake up in a cold sweat during the night, because I am so fucking scared of I don't know what. I need it constantly. And that was when things started to fall apart for me. You know, there's a line in the literature that I relate to maybe more than any line, and it says, when at the end of the road we found we could no longer function as a human being, either with or without drugs. That means you can't live with them and you can't live without them. There is nothing more miserable than to realize it's not just you have to stop using them and everything will be okay. You're dying when you aren't on them, and when you are literally dying. And it got really, like, existential for me. By the time I got to be about 16, that was the first time that I overdosed and came real close to death. And I realized at that time, based on my friend's reaction, which was basically to say, you know I'm not taking you to the hospital. We had this agreement. If one of us dies, we leave the body and go. And that was some hardcore shit for a bunch of little white kids in fucking West Palm Beach, Florida. But that's where we were. And I was like, oh, we weren't joking about that. You really are going to let me die here. And that scared the shit out of me. So I came into the rooms of NA not because I surrendered to the disease of addiction, or because I had a spiritual awakening, or because I had admitted the unmanageability. It was just me being scared again. This time I was scared that I was about to die at the age of 16 from something, either a drug overdose or malnutrition. Maybe I was going to get shot. I wasn't exactly sure. I remember sitting in this computer lab one day. I was at school, but I wasn't in class. I don't know what the hell I was doing. And I was thinking about how quickly I had been losing weight and the rate at which I was losing weight, because I didn't eat like a normal person. Like, I would eat like once every 2 days, and when I ate, I would eat an entire French silk pie and then just not eat again. and then sleep for 16 hours, and then not eat again, and then shower once every 2 days, and then eat another pie. And it was fucking ridiculous. And I was calculating that, you know, if the rate of weight loss remained constant, that I would be dead in 11 months, just based on what a human being could endure weight-wise. And I calculated that, and I looked at the 11 on my calculator, and I was just like, It wasn't like, oh my God. It was just like, well, that's interesting. 11. So that's what I've got. And I wasn't entirely surprised. Knowing my family history now, I would say that probably in the last 4 generations, let's say there's been 100 people, 30 of them are dead from either direct causes of drug addiction or indirect causes like cirrhosis of the liver or whatever the hell, like a massive amount. And I knew that going in, and all I thought was, well, that means that it's inevitable, and I may as well live fast and die pretty, because this is what I've got to work with. And so like an idol of mine, this girl in school that I looked up to, reappeared one day after being gone for months. We thought she was dead, and of course no one asked what happened to her. It was just she was gone, and she reappeared one day, and it happened to be right after that day that I nearly died. And I was like, where the hell have you been? And she was like, I went to rehab. And I was like, what? Do you want to go get high? And she was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore, actually. And I was like, interesting. Do tell. And God, I looked up to this girl. It was crazy how much I looked up to this girl. And she's like, I found this thing called NA, and you should come with me. And I was like, okay. Basically just because she told me to go. And I remember she picked me up for my meeting that night, and I told her, I think I'm going to give this a shot. And she was super excited and supportive and like hugging me and clapping and stuff. And I was like, why is she that excited? It's not that friggin' big of a deal. I'm just going to give it a shot. You know what I mean? So I gave it a shot, and I made it 9 days that first time. And 9 days was the point at which the emotional and physical pain of not using became so intense that I figured if I was meant to be clean, it wouldn't hurt this bad. That drugs had become a thing that I needed, like water or food, and that I just had to have it. So that was it. I was going to use again. So I did. And I went to the meetings, and they're like, keep coming back. You can do this. You never have to use again. And I remember how stupid that sounded, because I was like, what? I never have to? I want to. Like, I never have to eat again. That sounds about as enticing as never having to use again. And they were like, just keep coming back. We swear it gets easier. And that time I made it 18 days. And I was like, okay. That's better than 9. And then relapsed again because the pain got too great. Wasn't doing any of the shit I was supposed to do. Wasn't calling my sponsor or really working steps or doing much of anything. But, the program was failing me, clearly. So then I made it 27 days the next time. And I started to think that I was cursed by the number 9. Yeah. Because I could only stay clean in multiples of 9 days. And I was like, how fucking long is it going to take me to get 9 years? This is going to take forever. And I think at some point they were like, Melissa, all we can tell you is you got to white knuckle this for a minute, and the miracle will happen, and the obsession to use will lose you. Keep working the program. You have to work the whole program. You can't just work the parts of it that you feel like working that day. We have never seen an addict who has truly worked this program use. And I gave it everything I had. I really did. And I made it 4 months. And I got to the end of that 4 months, and I hadn't used in all that time, but I wasn't exactly working the program either. I was trying, but I just didn't really know what willingness was exactly. And I came to this point where I was like, all right, I have never been more miserable in my entire life. I can't do this anymore. This is killing me. That end of the road when we could no longer function as a human being, either with or without drugs. I knew if I went back to it, I was screwed. And yet, I didn't want to live if I couldn't be on drugs. So what the hell was there left to do? You know what I mean? And so I was like, all right, well, I guess I should kill myself. And, I started making a plan and doing that whole thing. And I was like, I guess that's how this ends. 16 years old, maybe 17. And then I was like, you know what? Let's try getting high again. Let's just see if that can solve the problem. Maybe I just didn't do it right before. I should have stayed away from that drug. And I should get off that drug for at least a month to get it out of my system. And I'll stick to this drug for a while. And that drug's never caused me any problems. It's totally fine. So I went back out there and, they say when you relapse, you kind of pick up right where you left off. And I just hit the ground sprinting. And I never came back. I never tried to come back again. What happened was after reaching some new lows that I never thought that I would get to and that I said I would never reach, I got blackmailed back in here. My mom showed up at my school one day with a lot of drugs. Like I had just stumbled into a very large amount of drugs. Like I was some kind of kingpin or something. It was silly. And she happened to find them. She'd found my drugs many times, but she never thought that those were the socially unacceptable ones. This one, though, that was the bad one. And as soon as I saw her, I knew I was screwed. And I used to tell my friends all the time, if I disappear, you know they got me. And that's kind of what happened. So she got me in the car, and I was like, oh, God. And she handed me the drugs. And she was like, all right, well, you have a choice. Rehab or the sheriff's office. And I knew that with what she had handed me, the sheriff's office was going to be a very bad time for me. And so I told her rehab. And I didn't come from money. So when I went to rehab, it was like the state-run rehab for juvenile delinquents on house arrest and people with criminal records, like the kind of place where you are under audio and video surveillance 24 hours a day, and they shine lights in your eyes when you're sleeping at night to see if you're still in your bed, and you don't have shoelaces or conditioner or a razor blade. Your showers get timed. And that was where things got to me. And somewhere around that time, I lost any sense of self-worth or self-respect or happiness that I had left. And that was the gift that set me free. Because when I got out again, there's something about depression that makes you willing to take suggestions. Depression and desperation. And that was what I needed. Because you could tell me to do anything, and I wouldn't even put up a fight. I had nothing left. I couldn't make it up a flight of stairs. I was so depressed. And so when I went back to the rooms of NA, because my mom said, well, now you're out of rehab, now you're going back. And I was like, okay. And I showed up, and the same damn people were there that had been there months ago. Like, they had just been sitting there waiting for me. And I was like, what a bunch of losers. Like, they just sit here all day, every day, waiting for me. And they didn't ask, like, what the fuck, what were you thinking? They were just like, we're so glad to see you. What are you going to do differently this time? And that was the end of the discussion. Like, there was no scolding or anything like that. And I found a sponsor, and I had a bunch of big, scary women intimidate me into working steps thoroughly. And I was afraid of them, so I did that. And I managed to stay clean. And, I remember this one time, the day that I realized what the first step actually meant, that powerlessness. Because I had been working on the first step, I think, at the time. And I was scared. And that fear was a gift as well, because that fear kept me clean, because it motivated me to do something different. And I remember talking to like maybe my sponsor or a couple friends or something, and I was feeling really squirrely, and I was like, look, I'm going to tell on myself, I'm feeling really squirrely, and I need you to do something for me. And they were like, anything. And I was like, if I tell you that I feel like using, I need you to physically restrain me. And they were like, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, you need to take me in your house, find a closet that locks, and lock me in. And I was like, at that time in NA, if you said you wanted to get high, they would hand you money and offer to drive you to the hood. That's just how they were. They didn't have time for anybody's bullshit. Like, they weren't there to persuade you. And so the people that I said that to, they kind of laughed, and they were like, if you want to get high, I'm going to give you money and tell you to piss off. We don't have time for that shit. I'm not going to fucking lock you in a closet. And I got mad. I was like, I'm serious. If you care about me, you'll lock me in the friggin' closet. And they were like, screw you. And I was like, you don't understand. I can't control myself. And that was when I realized what powerlessness meant. That I had a disease so strong that I knew I had to be physically restrained to avoid getting high. And that's when I realized I couldn't go back. You know what I mean? It got a lot easier after that point. A lot easier. And things got a lot better over time for me. So I'll give you a short list of incredible things that have happened to me in 13 years. Reese is excited. I graduated from high school with a 4.7 weighted GPA. I went to college and I met the true love of my life, who I've since married, and we've been together for 12 years. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism and went on to write for some of the biggest newspapers in the country. I traveled the world. I lived in New Zealand for 3 months. I've jumped out of airplanes. I've scuba dived the Great Barrier Reef. I eloped in Vegas. I got engaged in the Grand Canyon. And that was a big deal for me, because one of the fears that I had about getting clean young was that I haven't done this drug, I haven't done this drug, I've never been to prison. How are they going to know how hard I am if I don't have that shit on my record? Like, I need to show them. I'm a badass. And so I thought if I got clean young, I was going to be like this timid little church mouse, and people would treat me like Chucky, like they did when I was a kid. And that I would never have fun again, and that my highlights of my life would be like having punch and pie in a church basement, playing bridge with old ladies and shit. And I was terrified of that. So I made sure my recovery was not going to be like that at all. You know, I've seen and I've done some incredible things, and I've met and loved some incredible people. I've had the same sponsor for the 6 years that I've been in Atlanta, and this is a woman who came from where I came from. She is a former crack whore from South Florida, used to get high right next to where I used to get high. Now she is a successful, wealthy businesswoman with her own business. She hangs out with movie stars all day. I'm not even kidding you. And she's got a beautiful husband and child, and it's a life I really admire. It's one that I know I could have exactly if I did exactly what she did. And I think that's what recovery has taught me more than anything, is that, you know, if you want what we have, you will do what we did. And that means if you want what somebody has, all you have to do is find out exactly what they did to get there. And as long as you're not using anymore, you can have it. I'm not going to say that my recovery has been easy. When I was 18, my appendix burst and I nearly died. When I was 26, I lost sight in one of my eyes for 3 months, and it turned out I had MS. Still have it, by the way. That's another incurable disease I have. But none of that has to define me today. Just like the disease of addiction doesn't have to define me, other than in the sense of my recovery. And I don't know, man, if you're new, and especially if you're new and young, just realize what an incredible gift that you have. Because there's so much shit you can still do. You know what I mean? Like when the dope fiends who had been shooting dope for 40 years in the Bronx got clean at 62, it was still a miracle. But there wasn't as much potential left as when I walked in the door at 16. There just wasn't. That was the reality of their consequences. And I was lucky enough to find a different path. So that's why I stay, even though I haven't felt the desire to use drugs in, I don't even know how many years, like a long time. It's not about drugs anymore. It's about a different way of life. So that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Melissa. So we still have plenty of time if anybody would like to share.
I have a question. Can we do questions? I'm sorry.